I'll just talk about structure. Structure, the one thing, basically the term I use all the time with our structure people is it locks down the area. It locks it down. It locks it down like a jail. And it does that to stabilize. And so very often our structural people, those are your folks that you are going to see all of that kind of pretty messy scar tissue. You're going to feel it. They don't necessarily feel it, but the locking down kind of picture imaging for people, they totally get that. Like that, particularly when it's somebody with an unstable low back, right? It's just, I'm like, it's just locked. I'm like, I'm saying to our structure people all the time, you'd fall over on your face if it didn't lock it down like that. Then with the functional people, the zigzag pattern, now you're looking at the compensation patterns along the spine. Same idea though. Functionally, people are trying to achieve something, and that's why they're there for you. So in your office. So functional people, I always want them to acknowledge the brilliance of those compensations, because I say this kept you moving through time and space and performing, and this is how it did it. It's just long-term, these compensation patterns speak to the brain constantly getting these messages of threat because things don't move properly, right? So that is, for functional people, it really is around that compensation, and over time, they're just there because of it. So functional people also recognize that just because where they're feeling it might not even be the issue because of those compensation patterns. So that's why that zigzag pattern that Dawn always points out on the table to people is important, because now they'll start to tell you a whole bunch of other stuff probably that they didn't even tell you. And then stress is just like, I just ask stress people, what do people look like when they are fatigued, unwell, stressed out, tired? What do they look like? Right? Because if you ever look in the mirror at yourself and you're in one of those states of distress, you have a look to you. That takes that system offline, right? Because it's perceiving danger. So the autonomics now have to kick in to either fight, flight, or we're now in a frozen state. So that takes our social engagement offline. And so stress people, that facial stuff, I'm always asking them, do you love engaging with somebody who looks like that? Like, you don't. So that facial stuff we would speak to more in that particular love language on the table, or when they get up, what they look like. Your staff probably do this. I have my staff, if they say, whoa, so-and-so look different, I'm like, then tell them when they come out how different they look.
And
mention it to them.
I think people who've had chronic stress also have been told in the past that they get that, they call that the resting bitch face. And often they will have practice members that say that. They say, yeah, like sometimes what they're doing is they're giving off odd social cues with maybe what they don't feel like inside. And then they get a weird response, which then fires their. So that's why when your social engagements are offline, you actually can kind of like amplify the stress response in a relationship, because you're both giving each other weird social cues.
And the other thing from your staff's perspective, if they like, my girls are always saying, holy, like they look like a different person when they came out. And I'm always trying to get my CAs to mention that to those patients, because their job, because they don't have their hands on somebody, is to draw awareness to their feeling, right? Wow, do you ever look different? And then somebody will say, I feel different. Because remember, their face displays their autonomics. So we're trying, that's that interoceptive awareness displayed through the social engagement system as their facial expression changes. Ali was asking, because you can't see without your glasses on, and Nikki, yes, he does need your glasses. Can you tell me a bit more about the zigzag pattern?
So the zigzag pattern is when, especially on that first visit, when I'm doing basically my chiropractic exam, I'm basically, after we've done the postural tension tests, we're basically looking for tension or stress in the global system with the inability for the body to extend. And like we've talked about this before, if our spine can't physically extend comfortably, then we will not do it. And then when we do not do that, we do not fire our spinal, our extensor muscles down the spine. And if we don't fire those extensor muscles down the spine, they atrophy. And when they atrophy, the only muscles left to stabilize the spine are your multifidi. And your multifidi are segmental. Your paraspinals are multisegmental, so they run straight up and down the spine. So then what it's going to do is it's going to create that zigzag pattern. So you're going to feel, it's like, often I'll palpate, it'll be like occiput on, say, the right atlas area, mid-cervical on the left, first rib on the right, T4 on the left. Like, and I really, you can just palpate it back and forth and just really get them to feel that, that zigzag pattern. And then what that does is it just helps to draw out the awareness to all those different areas in their body where they feel tension. And as we educate them, things don't heal in a state of tension. So our goal is to be able to get a state of ease in all those areas. And so that's why when we refer to the zigzag, and then after I do the adjustment, I will repalpate through motion palpation so they can feel the difference in the freedom of movement in that area. I always think of it almost like a nail going into a piece of wood with kinks in it, right? If you have kinks in that nail and you keep banging on the nail, those kinks just get worse and worse over time. And again, that's a nice thing you can pop back for that structural love language as well.
And let us know if you have any other questions, Ali. And then kids, the neuroception of safety in kids, I think ease and comfortability. I just use the word comfortability all the time with our babies. Like they should be comfortable most of the time. The primary development of the social engagement system is suck, swallow, breathe, and vocalize. Those cranial nerves that allow a baby to suck, to swallow at the same time, to breathe at the same time, and then to vocalize, to make noises, to get their needs met, turn into language. So the suck, swallow, breathe, vocalize cranial nerve development is a huge part of why we assess facial symmetry, cranial symmetry. We look at what those babies' heads look like, what their faces look like. I very often most moms can't see it. Once they see it, then they can't unsee it. And very often I will just draw their awareness again. Neuroception and safety for babies is drawing the awareness to mom more than anything. And then I've talked about this in the past, having mom be the reporter back to us, because they are the ones who are going to see baby in their, I always say, in their natural environment. So when you're mom, you see your babes in their natural environment, their natural habitat. You bring them in here, they're in a zoo. So we don't necessarily get the opportunity to see the baby in their natural habitat. So we rely heavily on the reporter of neuroception of safety outside of here as mom reports things that I do not predetermine. I ask her merely to tell me information as to what she observes, and I don't give her ideas. I really want her to become more aware. I also am asking moms, especially with little ones, like babies or toddlers, to look at what we call safety movement patterns. So neuroception of safety means babies stretch, they stretch out, they move their arms and legs, they move them nicely together. We don't see a lot of rigidity, right? They start to toddle. They look like they're walking somewhat symmetrically. They're crawling symmetrically. Those are all movement patterns of safety. So those are just things, again, that I'm just drawing mom's awareness to, which most of the time they've never heard of before. And obviously all the other stuff we talked about, adaptability to environment, to new stimuli, to regulation, that they're able to poop, that they're breathing properly, that they're not snoring, all the things that speak to this baby really adapting to life outside the womb. Was there a question on there?
Digest.
Okay. Bye, Kyla. Good luck, you guys. Those guys have tons of exams next week. And the last concept is co-regulation. So this is not really, we didn't actually do any love language for co-regulation, because co-regulation is in the chiropractic office, in my opinion, less of a topic for table talk and more of a responsibility of the chiropractor. You are the co-regulator for anybody of any love language of any type that comes into your office. You have to understand how to be regulated so that when you're working with people, they also will co-regulate for you and become better self-regulators. So I really don't think, unless you're talking to specifically a mom and it comes up in conversation, or a parent, or sometimes you'll have couples, right? And it might come up incidentally. I really don't think there's a way to describe this differently for the love languages. I think this is just more of a responsibility of the practitioner more than anything, and the staff. And if it comes up, I mean, the biggest opportunities you have if you're in a family-based office is with parents. And the second biggest is for those of you that see a lot of couples, like we see a lot of like husbands and wives or partners. It also can come up in that conversation, but it's really only ever going to come up really incidentally. There's not a different way to describe this based on somebody's love language.